Okay. We'll figure this out, folks. It's not like we haven't done this before. Good Lord.
Am I all right to go, Brian?
It's all the floor is yours, Tom.
All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Tom Skrowski. I'm the Chief of Planning and Community Development for the City of Revere. I'm representing Mayor Patrick Keefe, who has been chairing the Capital Budget Oversight Committee over the last few months as we've been reviewing the T's CIP and working with a committee to make recommendations that you have in front of you this morning. I want to thank Brian and Hannah and the team for helping put this report together and the accompanying presentation. And I will run through a few slides and then open it up for discussion with the end goal of hopefully endorsing this plan. So just to get to why we are here statutorily, the MBTA is mandated to submit a final capital investment plan to the advisory board for its review, which brings us here today. And overall, our key takeaways after reviewing this plan, it's a nuts and bolts CIP, which means it's really building on previous year's successes with the track improvement program, a number of state of good repair programs, which I think the T has been doing a phenomenal job in recent years, getting us in a much better place within our system. Just to take a look at the track improvements, we've had over 250,000 feet of rail replaced over the last few years, removed over 200 speed restrictions. And I think everybody that I've spoken to, both in this committee, but just in the community, has raved about the work that General Manager Eng has been doing with the T with these critical repairs. So I think we applaud that work, and we applaud the efforts to continue to fund those state of good repair programs and track improvements to get the T back on the right track. This CIP has an emphasis on accessibility and resiliency, which we similarly applaud. Just to give you a quick funding breakdown of the various revenue sources you see on your left.
All right, Tom, we can't see the slides. Can you advance them on your end?
Oh, that's strange. Never works the way you want it to, does it? All right,
Never does.
I'm looking at them just fine.
We see your slides, but it's not in presenter view.
Yeah, and I'm looking at, I got a few different screens up, and let's try this one. Can you see it now?
Nope. There you go.
Okay.
Got it?
Got it. Thanks, Tom.
All right, wonderful. So I'll just go back just one quick slide so you can see what was previously. So that just sort of states where we're at, and appreciate you all calling that out. But these were the really important graphics anyway, so I'm glad we're starting here. So a funding breakdown, it's roughly $10 million CIP, funds over 670 discrete capital projects, 108 new projects. Is important to note, among the $13+ billion in community projects requested, this only does fund $1 billion of those. So it is a necessary but insufficient investment in our system. But again, working with the system that the MBTA has to fund it, it is really all they can do under the circumstances. The report notes, and you can see on your left, among the CIP revenue sources, the largest single source of revenue for the MBTA for infrastructure is through the sale of debt. And operating revenue is used each year to service that debt, over $600 million annually. To fund these programs. And the report notes that the MBTA is the only major transit system in the country without a dedicated source of capital every year throughout its CIP, and instead has to rely on debt service to meet that obligation. So I know this is not news to anyone on the call and has been discussed at length, but the MBTA is woefully underfunded on a capital investment side, and that needs to change. But this is the structural issue that the T is operating under within the CIP. You can see on the right-hand side the various CIP funding by mode of transportation. About 40% of this is going into rapid transit. about 10% for buses, a little under 1% for ferries, about a quarter is going to commuter rail. And then there are various system-wide improvements. The major one in that case would be the automated fare collection system, just to go over a few other major improvements in the other categories. Under bus systems, there's a large investment in the Quincy bus facility that is working to support the development of battery operated vehicles. For commuter rail, the largest single item, about $680 million, is going into the drawbridge at the Charles River on the North Station approach, as well as about $286 million going towards new bi-level coaches. On the rapid transit side, there's roughly $550 million investment in new, accessible, more user-friendly Green Line trains. And just overall is a pretty well-balanced CIP amongst these various modes and tackling again some critical system needs. There you can see the funding broken down by spending type in a little bit more detail. And overall, the report and the advisory committee that has reviewed it over the past couple of weeks has noted that the MBTA has made some commendable work, again, with this structural deficit that they're operating under with these insufficient resources. But ultimately, we need that structural reform to make sure that the T is capable of supporting the authority's capital needs. And secondarily, we note that the CIP planning process lacks a strategic vision for our public transportation system. So while this is a really important nuts and bolts plan that addresses critical needs of the T, there is at times a lack of forward-thinking strategic vision within the plan. But again, that's due to a lack of planning on the state side. And most importantly, the CIP is supposed to be based off of the Program for Mass Transportation, which is the strategic vision for the region's transportation network. This was due over a year ago, but MassDOT will not complete it until December 2025. So it's hard to put a CIP in place that is really responding to the strategic vision for our transportation network if that PMT is not in place. So, it's a great plan in terms of the nuts and bolts, but that's a critical missing piece of the puzzle here. How are we looking forward to not just support the T system that we have today, but one that can help move us into the future? So at that, I'll pause. And Brian and Hannah and the team, we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to note that there are representatives from the authority here, Lindsay Heffernan, the Chief of Capital Planning, Strategic Planning, and many members of her team, Mike, Malia. There's a lot of folks here. So if folks have specific questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them as well. And if you don't mind calling on folks, sir, people can use the raise hand function and we can do it that way.
Anybody have any questions of the report? Looking for hands up. Oh, Leonard.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very good report. I think it's very well balanced. I like the points that it covers. I held back because my question may be a bit out of scope, and feel free to call me on that. But I really like how you pointed out that the PMT is not being controlled by the MBTA, and I feel that I should know. Has that always been the case that MassDOT has done the PMT for the T? And like I said, if this is out of scope, we can discuss it another time, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we can discuss another time, but
Sure.
We can stay to the meat of the report. That'd be great.
Sure, no problem at all.
Thank you, Leonard. Anybody else on the report itself? Please use the raise hand. Steve from Watertown. Then we'll go to Alan.
I think Alan was ahead of me. Okay, well, I'll go ahead. I'm curious, has the T responded to the lack of a vision comment? And, if so, what was their response to that?
So Steve, the next step here, and I should have clarified that at the outset, next week on the 20th, Mayor Keefe will actually be presenting this to the MBTA Board of Directors, provided that this body approves and endorses this report.
Okay, so they haven't had a chance to respond yet because we haven't presented it to them formally.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Alan?
Good morning. I support issuing this the advisory board's CIP work report to the T. But I just want to point out that there is a glaring omission in the MBTA's capital plans. And speaking for 35 communities that are served by the Old Colony lines running from Quincy down to Plymouth and across the Fall River. That's 20% of the total communities. Just recently, as you know, the Old Colony lines were extended to service Fall River and New Bedford, and it took 30 plus years to get that. But the glaring omission, and it's mentioned in the report, is that Old Colony service is constrained by single track in a section of Quincy and much of Dorchester, and that they can't provide any better level of service than what they're doing now. At least that's what they claim. And then basically at this point, they're not even back to where the service levels were before COVID. So I asked my 34 community neighbors to Brockton to keep this active, that we need to push either in the program of mass transit, future capital plans, that they need to do something to relieve the constraint for the Old Colony lines. You know, there's plans on the books for regional rail. Well, okay, where it stands now, Old Colony lines could not be included because of this constraint. So I just want to point that out and hope that my peers in the South Shore keep this hot. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Deborah from Stoughton.
Oh, good morning, everyone. I also support submitting this report to the MBTA through you, Mr. Chairman. But my question is to the representatives from the MBTA, if they can answer the question, why is there no strategic plan? When I reviewed the operational budget, that was one of the things that jumped out to me as well. And so it's now raised a red flag to me. So I asked the MBTA representatives, why?
Brian, anybody here want to handle that? I don't have everybody on my screen.
Lindsay, do you mind answering
Sure.
that?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lindsay Heffernan, and I'm the Chief of Policy and Strategic Planning at the MBTA. As you can tell by my title, we do strategic work here at the T. I think what I'm feeling is a strong acknowledgement that I guess I will make that our communication therein, though, could use some improvement. Representative from Stoughton, we have a strategic plan. It's been presented to our board. We have 8 clear goals. We've moved forward with service goals for those known as full T ahead, and we're working to try to make sure we communicate those more clearly. That I would say are sort of interim to something like a 25-year capital plan, because 25 years is a long way away, and people would like to see service improvements even in advance of that. So I will certainly, as was noted, we got this report a couple of days ago. I'll be connecting up with the general manager before this is presented to the full board on Tuesday, and we'll be certainly sharing with the feedback that I'm hearing from all of you. And as I have heard from Mr. Kane previously, a desire that we be more transparent in the goals that the MBTA has, while we continue to work with our partners at MassDOT on some of the longer range planning.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any other questions, comments?
Dan from Whitman.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that the station that's in Plymouth by the old cottage park hasn't been used. That the furthest south that goes rail is in Kingston. Will they ever go all the way to the cottage back again? Is that in the foresight? Because if not, I'm also on the Joint Transportation, Old Colony Planning Council Joint Transportation right here. And they had some concerns saying that if the T isn't planning on using it, is it possible to make it a walking area for people to walk along the water line? But I said, well, it depends if the T was thinking about getting back to going all the way to Plymouth again by the rail. So I'm just curious. You hear me?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, do you want me to try to respond to that, sir? I
If
don't
you'd
know
like
if this
to,
is
Lindsay, that'd be great, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I just want to follow your process
No,
here.
no problem.
Good morning, Mr. Salvucci. I will absolutely connect up with my colleagues in railroad operations. There was a decision made a few years ago to terminate the trains in North Kingston. If I remember correctly, at the time, North Kingston ridership was quite higher than Plymouth. And when you have a rail at a rail line where at the end they break into a spur, the challenge we have is that you have to pull a train back and reverse it to get back to then go into Boston. That presents some real operational constraints. I am happy to try to take that, Mr. Kane, if reasonable, offline and try to get an answer as to what the plans are. Plymouth is an important community. We're trying to do the best we can with what we have and with the constraints along that line. As has already been mentioned, single tracking is a problem for us. One we're working hard to figure out how to eradicate so that we can ultimately provide more robust service along many of our commuter rail lines.
Yeah, I would appreciate it if in fact you decide not to use it. If you could contact Old Colony Planning Council.
Sure.
And
You could
maybe we can come up with a plan or some money to make that a walking area and a biking area, because there's less and less areas around.
certainly.
So I know that they did that in the old train lines in Rockland. There's like 1.5 miles, 2 miles of biking and walking trails through the woods in that area. So it's just something that they're thinking about.
Sure, we're happy to have that conversation. You can imagine that there are many places in the state where we gave up our right of way and later went back to buy it back, because I think the
Right.
people of Plymouth someday would like to have the commuter rail service there, and they actually have a lovely station in Plymouth too. So that is a complex ask, I will say, but I understand it completely. So happy
Yeah,
to try to make
especially
sure
with there's a
we
lot
connect.
of housing now
There
in the
is.
old cottage. So I mean, the ridership may be there.
It is a
the
question I
future.
know we are trying to understand more clearly which of those two terminus. North Kingston, I know, does have quite a large parking lot comparatively, and so we think there's a larger draw right there. Again, I need to get my information more updated, sir. But and in addition, we've been working with GATRA to provide a
Yeah.
loop there, and so we're trying
Good.
to make sure people have the access, but the operational constraints are real. So
I'm on GATRA too. Yeah.
I will follow up
Okay.
with the Old Colony Planning Council.
Thank
Yep.
you, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody
you.
else? Any questions?
Actually, I do have a
Concern?
question. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Joe.
Hi, I'm from Hingham. So I note that the report has federal sources of funds is 41%. It's the second largest source of funds. And the report goes on to say that federal grants are the authority's most predictable source of annual grant funding. In today's environment, do you think we need to make an edit to how the report currently relies on federal funds?
We can certainly put in the word traditionally if that makes folks happier. That's no problem at all.
The question is where are we looking if the reliability of federal funds is really not something we should be relying on?
Well, we could go on on that one. I think we have to make an assumption here for now and regroup when if that time that should occur. So duly noted, Joe. Any other questions? How about a motion to accept the reports? We can move forward.
I'll make that motion, Dan Salvucci with me.
And I'll
Have a
second that.
Okay. Brian, we can do it by eye.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you could use your hand. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. I appreciate the work done by the committee on this. So thank you all very much. And as was said, it'll be presented to the board next week. Next item, Brian.
So Mr. Joe Regan from the MBTA will present the operating budget, which we then ask the board to vote to refer it to the Operating Budget Oversight Committee for a review and report back at our next meeting.
Okay.
So Joe, if I made you a co-host, feel free to drive, and floor is yours, sir.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Joe Regan. I'm the operating budget director at the T. I'm standing in for Mary Ann today. Can everybody see my screen just to make sure we're all technically looking good here? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the summarized operating budget presentation, which was given to the board on April 24th. And this is what I'm going to run through, and I'm happy to answer any questions as we go. So please feel free to jump in as I go through these slides. So first, just starting with the timeline here, you can see at the beginning of this chart down at the bottom, the MBTA's budget process really starts in December with the pro forma presentation. And this year was unique as well because that was when the Transportation Finance Task Force report was also released. So this is, that report was looking at long-term funding strategies for the MBTA, looking at operational needs, capital needs, additional surtax revenues, and just how to make all that fit together. The next step in the process, the governor releases her version of the budget. Then the pro forma presentation is formally given in February. March and April is really when the meat of the budget process takes place, where we're figuring out our numbers both on the state and the MBTA side. And then you can see in April, this is when the preliminary budget presentation was given. Next step in the process is that the state will meet on their versions of the budget, both the House and the Senate. They'll iron out the differences, and then our board vote to approve the budget on the MBTA side is statutorily needs to be done by June 15th, and it's currently scheduled for June 12th. So the reason we lay out the timeline here is because it's challenging to project the MBTA's operating budget revenues because we are so heavily dependent on subsidies from the state. And the state does not finish their budgeting process until after the MBTA is required to vote on our budget for the year. So for this year's numbers and for this presentation, we're basing the FY26 budget off of the governor's proposal. There are two bills that are floating through the House or floating through the legislature right now, which is the FY25 SUP and the FY26 budget proposal. And again, we base our numbers off of the governor's version of both of those bills. So this is our high-level overview for FY26. So you can see in the red highlighted box down here, our net revenue position is minus $168 million. This is an improvement from the FY25 budget where our deficit was $307 million. You can see in the row below that we also have annual savings targets like many of our peer agencies. So our target for FY26 is $82 million. Assuming we achieve that target, our net deficit is $86 million, which will then be balanced with the deficiency fund and MBTA reserves, which is a practice that's taken place over the past couple of years. Looking at the revenues, we are increasing our revenues by 13%, which is $361 million. This is primarily due, again, to the governor's proposal for additional revenues to the MBTA in the supplemental budget and the FY26 budget proposal. We're also seeing increased fare revenues, which is a positive sign. We're trending above expectations through FY25, and we expect that to continue into FY26. It's really attributable to hiring additional drivers, the completion of the track improvement program, and just more effective preventative maintenance taking place. So we're seeing some really positive trends there. We'll get into this in greater detail in the following slides. Looking at our debt service. So our debt service is going up by $93 million, which is 20%. And this is primarily due to the absence of capitalization of interest. So in FY25, in order to balance the budget, the MBTA was required to capitalize interest because there was no additional funding proposals, floating through the legislature at the time. So given what is happening on the state side, the MBTA does not need to capitalize interest in FY26. Looking at our expenses, we're up by 7%, which is $222 million. This is primarily driven by collective bargaining increases, increased hiring, as well as commuter rail, CBAs, utilities, and insurance. So this is a more detailed look at our revenues. These are some of our major categories that we track. Again, we're up by 13%, which is $361 million. Looking at fare revenue specifically, we're $46 million positive in FY26. Again, this is mostly coming from favorable ridership on commuter rail and bus, which is matching FY25 trends. And then our rail numbers are starting to increase as well. Going into our sales tax revenue, this you can see here, this is by far the MBTA's largest revenue source. So this is a statutorily provided sales tax transfer to the MBTA. We match what is in the governor's proposal, which is $1,400,000,000 and $1,425,000,000 for FY26. And this sales tax transfer is the same in all versions of the budget that have been proposed on the state side. So the House, the governor, and the Senate are all matching that same number. So you can see this is a decrease from FY25. It's mainly driven by decreased consumer sentiment, specifically on motor vehicle sales. And it's really attributable to uncertainty at the federal level. So there is pessimism about sales tax collections, which is impacting our revenue numbers for FY26. Looking at our federal revenues, we are not counting on any federal revenues in the operating budget for this year. So in FY25, we utilize 5307 preventative maintenance grants to help balance the operating budget. We are not doing that in FY26, and there are no remaining outstanding FEMA payments that are expected to be received in FY26. So that's why you see this big decrease of $191 million in this line. For additional state assistance, again, this is what is proposed in the governor's FY25 SUP. So we take that amount and the plan is to draw down the funding that is proposed in that bill over multiple years. And the expected drawdown in FY26 is $196 million. And then you can see the component parts here, which is $50 million for income eligible fares, $133 million for FTA directive support, and then $13 million for the Sumner Tunnel reimbursement. The line below that is state contract assistance. This is where this is coming from the governor's FY26 budget proposal. So this increases the contract assistance number from 314 to 687 in FY26. And then the governor and the House have both matched that number. The Senate is lower on that number. So the Senate has proposed $500 million. So going into our fare revenues, this just shows our budget versus our projection for where we're trending for FY25 and then compares that to FY26. So you can see we budgeted $403 million in revenue, which is about 58% of our pre-pandemic levels. This year so far, we're trending about 3% higher than that. So 61% pre-pandemic levels. And that equates to about $428 million in revenue. And then 449 is what we have budgeted for FY26. Commuter rail is really the strongest performer on the MBTA right now, with the opening of South Coast Rail and then also the installation of fare gates at South Station and Back Bay expected in FY26. That's feeding our increased revenue assumptions. And then we're also seeing increased off-peak ridership due to the enhanced regional rail schedule on the commuter rail. For heavy and light rail, the completion of this TIP program, decreased headways, and the elimination of slow zones is re-attracting ridership. And the MBTA hit 65% of our pre-pandemic baseline on our rail lines for the first time since the pandemic began. So that's a huge positive sign. And then we just got preliminary numbers for April as well. And those numbers on rail have increased to 68%. So we're very excited to see that trend is sticking and that ridership is continuing to be reattracted. So on bus, continued hiring of bus operators is resulting in decreased drop trips. So we're seeing some positive revenues from that. And then on the ferry, there's also increased revenues due to the continuation of new routes for Winthrop, East Boston, and Lynn. So all of this adds up to a pretty positive fare revenue picture. But again, this makes up a small component of the MBTA's total revenues. So looking at our expenses, we're $222 million positive, or increase, I guess, negative in FY26. This is mainly driven by wages, utilities, insurance, commuter rail, and debt service. So looking at our wages, we are up by $73 million, which is a 9% increase. This is primarily due to CBAs. About 85% of the MBTA's workforce is unionized, and then there is a flat 4% increase as part of those agreements that drives up our wage number. And then our budgeted headcount for FY26 is 8,030 employees. Benefits up by 4%. We did a historical true up for the pension expense. This was trending a bit below expectations in FY25, and we expect that trend to continue in FY26. Looking at materials and services, utilities are up, insurance is up, and then materials is also a major driver here. This is driven by the preventative battery and radiator maintenance for the bus fleet. So there's major repairs for our bus fleets that are expected in FY26 on the operating budget. Services are down, which is a positive sign. So we're down by $8 million on services, and that is due to reduced reliance on third-party contractors and professional services. So when the MBTA talks about our savings target, this is really the primary line item where we go after that, and we try to do more work in-house. So we're seeing positive trends in that. On the commuter rail, we're up by 20 million. This is a fixed price increase, primarily that's driving it. There were also collective bargaining increases that we're splitting with Keolis. And then there are FRA mandates for cybersecurity that are also increasing our numbers a bit. Ride is primarily driven by the income eligible fare program, ferry driven by the new routes, and then debt service via not capitalizing any interest in FY26, as we previously discussed. So looking at the T's headcount, this is a historical look back compared to the FY26 budget. So the 26 budget allows for additional hiring to support service delivery, maintenance, and specifically the FTA directive response, which people have talked about as, the workforce assessment is a term that you'll hear pretty frequently at the MBTA. So this looked at the safety, maintenance, and rail transit divisions and was really used as the guiding principle for allocating headcount in developing the FY26 budget. So of the MBTA's 8,030 positions, 4,100 of those are dedicated to the workforce assessment in those three specific divisions. And it is it's in line with what was submitted to the FTA. And then in addition to that, we have nearly 2,000 bus operators budgeted for in FY26, which allows us to keep making progress with bus network redesign. Then this is just a quick look at our savings target. So like many other agencies, we're trying to tighten our belt here a little bit and do more work internally to reduce our reliance on third-party contractors. We've established cross-functional working groups to try to generate some cost savings and just see how we can work more efficiently across different silos within the MBTA. And then the goal of the savings plan is to help reduce expenses and then preserve our reserves going forward. And that is pretty much it. And this is just the vote language to release the materials to you guys, which you should have already. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Joe. I know, Brian, we've got this will go into subcommittee. And I believe June 10th will come back as a full board to vote on it in final form, right? Okay.
That's correct, sir.
In the meantime, Joe's offered if anybody has any questions initially, again, we'll be going into committee and we'll be having further discussion on it in committee. Anybody have any questions at this point? Stephen?
Yeah, so what exactly is a savings target? Is that money you're really going to save, or is it a maybe, or what is it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's a combination of things that is I would say it is half deliberate efforts that the MBTA can take to do work more efficiently in-house. And then it is half items that we have to budget for, which it is uncertain how much our actual expenses are going to be for that. So the best example is snow removal. So we have to budget a minimum amount for snow removal during the season. And then during the year, depending on how much snow we actually get, we can accrue some savings through that. On the admin side, it is mostly trying to do as much work in-house as we possibly can and not have to bring in third-party consultants to help us out with anything. That's where we're seeing a lot of positive progress. And then in FY25, for example, we had a pretty light snow year, so we did accrue some savings in FY20 this winter on that, but unfortunately it's offset by higher utility prices. So it's a mix of a bunch of different variables. So in my opinion, I think the savings target is achievable for FY26. We've, achieved our target for FY25, but as we go into the future, I think these will become more difficult to achieve, just because there is a finite amount of efficiencies that you can get within an organization. So
this is money that you may or may not receive. So, I mean, and you feel it's a high probability, but isn't there a different probability for each one of these things, whether they may actually occur or they're not, or they just wishful thinking?
yeah, there is each, there's as you're saying, there's a variety of different things that are in this bucket. Some have a higher probability of being achieved and some have a lower probability of being achieved. And then some we just have no control over, which, for example, would be like the snow that I was talking about. We do have enough in reserves in FY26 to be able to balance the budget, even if this savings target was not achieved. But this is a high priority of both the CFO and the CAO. And they're really, there's month over month, we are generating different areas where we can work more efficiently. But to your point, if we do not achieve this savings target, we do still expect to be able to balance the FY26 budget.
Thank you, Joe. Duncan has his hand up. Duncan.
Yep, thank you. I'm trying to unmute. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I just was curious whether, knowing that the South Coast service has not been up for very long, whether there's any sense that there might be a risk or difference between what you assumed and how that might actually play out.
Yeah. So on the fare revenue piece with South Coast Rail, it does make up it is a positive revenue indicator for FY26, but it does make up a minority. It's not going to be a huge needle mover effectively. It's a small amount of ridership in the grand scheme of the MBTA's ridership. Really, what is the major driver for fare revenue increases in FY26 is the new gates that are going to be installed at South Station and Back Bay. So as an example, when the gates were installed at North Station, we saw a 25% increase in M-ticket activations overnight. So our fare compliance increased pretty dramatically as soon as those gates were installed. So we're squeezing a bit more revenue out of our existing ridership, and that's really that's the primary assumption for commuter rail in FY26.
Okay, very helpful. Thanks.
Thank you, Duncan. Deborah, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chairman. My question is regarding debt service, again, specifically the capitalization of interest that you talked about on slide 3. Can you give a little more detail on capitalization of interest? I heard what you indicated, the earliness or due date of the operational budget, but I wanted to better understand why it's listed in fiscal year 25, but not in fiscal year 2026. Is that an accounting requirement, and you plan to adjust the budget later to give better number? I just didn't understand about the capitalization of interest.
Yeah, so to go into more detail about that, so if effectively, and I wish Pat Landers, our treasurer, was here because he could write a book on this topic. But effectively, what it is this is a way for us to be able to, kick our debt payments out further. So it is a last resort financial move. It is not the preference of the MBTA to do this because it's basically just taking money that we should be paying in FY25 and spreading it out over multiple fiscal years in order to give us a little more breathing room in the year in which we do it. So it's a move that the MBTA only likes to pull if there are no other options. And in FY25, because there were no other funding solutions, this was something that we had to do to try to get the deficit down. So in FY26, because there are revenue proposals that are coming through the state, it's an item where the MBTA does not want to do that because it will effectively increase our debt service payments in future fiscal years.
Thank you. Got it. The second question On that same page, it's under fiscal year budget deficit. The second bullet starting with 86 million deficit. My question is related to deficiency fund. How is it funded, and what are the controls?
Yeah, so the MBTA's deficiency fund is really, that's our primary reserve account. So just to look back on it for a minute, the history of this is that during the pandemic, the MBTA received a large amount of money from ARPA and the CARES Act and all the other federal actions that were taken right in the beginning of the pandemic. So that money is stored in the deficiency fund, and every year that the MBTA has a deficit, we're effectively taking money out of our savings account to try to replenish that. So that was the last major inflow into the deficiency fund, which was multiple years ago. And then in the Senate, House, and Governor's proposal, there is a replenishment that are in those bills. So the state is proposing to replenish the MBTA's reserves. There are various reasons for that. It mostly comes down to cash flow, where if you look at the amount of money that the MBTA pays out on any given month out of our checking account, so to speak, we have that balance of the checking account can fluctuate by about $200 million a month, just paying our payroll, paying Keolis, paying our debt service, and all the other invoices that we have. So long story short, the MBTA basically, there have been no major inflows into the deficiency fund since the beginning of the pandemic. The state is proposing another inflow to replenish those funds or replenish those reserves. And the goal is that as we get the deficit down, we're reducing the reliance on those reserves. So, and then to bring it full circle, if the MBTA, for example, had a positive revenue year, like instead of ending $168 million in the hole, we ended $80 million positive, we would deposit that money into the deficiency fund, so it would go into our savings account. So it's a bit of I know that's a bit of a rambling answer.
Well, thank you, Joe, on that. I know we're getting close, and this is going to go into committee. There'll be 2 or 3 committee meetings, and then we'll be coming back out as a full board. So just in the spirit of time, I see Leonard, you got your hand up. You got a succinct question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And it'll only be a question. Regarding the income eligible fares, on slide 4, I see the state's giving us the 50 million. Is that compensating fully for the impact on fares that we're seeing from that program, which I am very supportive of, just to be clear?
Yeah, that program is still very new, and the goal of the state proposal is to cover both operating expenses and lost revenues. So again, I'll be quick on this, but about 90% of our riders that take the ride are eligible for a fare reduction and to move into this program. So there are some pretty significant revenue losses there that the state is attempting to backstop the MBTA for. And then on the flip side, there's also more riders that are expected to be attracted to the ride. Like our ridership is going to go up, and the amount of money that we're collecting on those rides is going to go down. $50 million is the full implementation of the program. So once this thing is fully up and running, that's what we expect the annual cost and revenue loss to be. But it's a matter of when we get there. And then that number also varies in the state and Senate proposals. Both the state and the Senate have only proposed $20 million for that versus the $50 million in the governor's budget.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leonard. Joe, thank you for the explanation. As I said, we're going to put this into the Operating Budget and Oversight Committee. There's going to be meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I believe May 22nd at 10, May 29th and June 5th, and then we'll come back as a full board on June 10th at 10 a.m. To make the recommendation. I do want to just publicly thank Governor Healy and our legislatures. I know there's always differences when you bring the 3 together in the final bill, the final numbers, but we've gone in a huge positive direction over the last couple of years to address some of these major shortfalls and challenges that the T's been dealing with. So, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Phil Ling and the whole team for the great work they continue to do. So I know it is advisory board. I've been around for a long time. I know there's some members here that have been around a long time and felt like we're banging our head against the wall for years. But this tremendous progress that's been made, and we continue to make progress on the financial side. So thank you for that. Any other issues, Brian? Or
No, sir.
business issues? Okay. See, now why don't we take a motion to put this into committee? Anybody?
Make the motion.
I'll
Second.
second it, Dan from Whitman.
Okay, all those in favor going to committee? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Do I see a hand up question from Bob in Bridgewater?
I believe he was voting, sir.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Okay. I don't think we have any other issues before the board, correct, Brian? That's the last item. So I'd
That's
accept
correct,
the
sir.
motion to adjourn.
So moved, Dan from Whitman.
Second.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
No, the ayes have it. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.